It was a warm afternoon in Los Angeles, 1967. The air inside Bruce Lee's compact training studio hung thick with sweat and effort. Sunlight filtered through narrow windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. There were no banners. No motivational posters. Just bare walls, a few striking pads, and space enough for movement. About 15 students stood in a loose semicircle, watching intently. Most of them had heard the stories. The legend of Bruce Lee was already spreading. Whispers of his impossible speed, his revolutionary approach to martial arts, the way he could dismantle traditional forms with a single question. But today, they were here to learn. Bruce stood at the center, calm and grounded. He wore a simple black training shirt and loose pants. His posture was casual, but his presence filled the room. There was no need for theatrics. He never raised his voice. Never puffed his chest. Yet when he moved, the air seemed to shift. Today's lesson was about economy of motion. Not wasted energy. Not flashy techniques. Just pure, direct action. The shortest path between 2 points. He had been explaining the principle for several minutes. How most martial artists overcommit, telegraph their strikes, waste precious fractions of a second with unnecessary wind-up. Your opponent doesn't wait for you to get ready, Bruce said quietly, his voice cutting through the silence. By the time you prepare your strike, he's already hit you. The students nodded. It made sense in theory. But theory and reality are not the same thing. Bruce gestured to one of his senior students, a tall man with a strong build. The student stepped forward, assuming a fighting stance. Bruce positioned himself just a few feet away, relaxed, hands low. "Watch," Bruce said. And then it happened. One moment, Bruce was still. The next, his hand was an inch from the student's face. There was no wind-up. No visible preparation. Just an instant of explosive motion, and then stillness again. The student blinked, barely processing what had occurred. The others stared, wide-eyed. "Did you see it?" Bruce asked. A few hesitant nods. Most stayed silent, unsure. "Let me do it again." Bruce reset. Same stance. Same relaxed posture. And again, the strike came like lightning, so fast it was almost a blur. This time, a few students flinched even though they weren't the target. Bruce stepped back, scanning the room. He could see the confusion on their faces. Some were trying to replay the movement in their minds, but they couldn't. It had been too fast. Their brains hadn't captured the sequence. This was the problem Bruce had been wrestling with for years. How do you teach something that exists beyond thought? How do you transmit instinct through instruction? Standing beside Bruce was Dan Inosanto, his close friend and training partner. Dan had been with Bruce through countless sessions, absorbing his philosophy, helping refine the emerging framework of Jeet Kune Do. He understood Bruce's mind better than most. Dan glanced at the students, then back at Bruce. He could feel their frustration. They wanted to learn, but they were stuck. They couldn't replicate what they couldn't see. Dan leaned in slightly, his voice low and respectful. "Show them slowly so they can understand." It was a reasonable suggestion. Logical. If the students couldn't follow the movement at full speed, break it down. Slow it down. Let them see the mechanics, the angles, the sequence of muscle engagement. That's how teaching usually works. Step by step. Piece by piece. Bruce paused. For a moment, he seemed to consider it. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. The students waited, expecting him to demonstrate the technique in slow motion, frame by frame, so they could finally grasp it. But Bruce didn't do that. Instead, he turned back to the students, his gaze steady and quiet. He said nothing at first. Just stood there, letting the silence settle. Then, without warning, he moved again. Full speed. Maybe even faster than before. His hand shot forward in a straight blast, stopping just short of another student's face. The movement was so sudden, so precise, that the student jerked backward instinctively, nearly losing balance. The room went dead silent. No one understood. Why didn't he slow it down? Why make it harder to learn? Bruce stepped back, his breathing calm and even. He looked at each of them, one by one, and then he spoke. "Some things," he said slowly, "cannot be learned slowly." The words landed heavy. Speed is not just fast motion. Timing is not just counting seconds. If you only train slow, your body will remember slow. And when reality hits you, when someone comes at you with intention, with violence, with no warning, you will fail. He let that sink in. You think slowing it down will help you understand. But understanding is not the same as doing. You can study a punch for hours, break it into 100 pieces, analyze every angle. But if you never experience the real speed, the real pressure, the real shock of it, you will never be ready. Have you ever tried to learn something by breaking it down, only to realize that doing it for real felt completely different? Bruce began to pace slowly, his tone measured but firm. When I move at full speed, your brain cannot follow. That's the point. In a real fight, you won't have time to think. You won't have time to remember the steps. Your body has to respond before your mind catches up. And the only way to train that is to expose yourself to it. One of the students, a younger man with doubt still in his eyes, raised his hand hesitantly. But, how are we supposed to learn if we can't even see what you're doing? Bruce stopped pacing. He looked at the student directly. You learn by feeling it. By being surprised. By failing. And then trying again. Bruce walked over to the student who had just spoken. He motioned for him to stand. Get ready, Bruce said. The student tensed, uncertain what was coming. Bruce didn't strike. He simply moved his hand toward the student's face at moderate speed, not slow, but not full speed either. The student flinched, but he saw it coming. You blocked it in your mind, Bruce said. You anticipated. You prepared. That's good for training. But now... Without warning, Bruce moved again, full speed. The student didn't even flinch this time. He froze. His body didn't react at all. His brain hadn't registered the movement until it was already over. Bruce stepped back. You see? When it's real, your thinking fails you. Your body has to take over. And your body only learns through repetition at real speed, under real pressure. He turned back to the group. This is why I don't slow it down. Not because I want to confuse you, but because I want you to feel what real speed is. I want your nervous system to experience it. I want your body to panic, to struggle, to adapt. That's how you grow. Dan Inosanto watched quietly, arms crossed, a faint smile on his face. He had seen Bruce do this before. Challenge conventions, reject the comfortable path, push students beyond what they thought they needed. Dan understood now. Bruce wasn't being stubborn. He was being precise. He knew that if he slowed the technique down, the students would learn a slow version of it. They would internalize hesitation. They would train their bodies to operate in a mode that didn't exist in real combat. Bruce's philosophy was becoming clearer with every session. Train how you fight. Fight how you train. There was no separation. One of the students, an older man with a background in traditional martial arts, spoke up. But in my old school, we always practiced forms slowly first. We built precision. Then we added speed. Bruce nodded. I respect that method. It works for many things. But it also creates a gap. A gap between practice and reality. And in that gap, people get hurt. He let the words breathe. When you practice slow, you practice control. But control and speed are not the same. Speed requires abandon. It requires commitment. You can't halfway commit to a fast strike. You either do it, or you don't. The older student frowned, still processing. Bruce continued. I'm not saying slow practice is useless. It has its place. But if that's all you do, you will never be fast. You'll be precise. Yes. Controlled. Yes. But slow. And in a real fight, slow gets you hit. He walked to the center of the room again, his tone softening slightly. What I'm teaching you is not a technique. It's a principle. The principle is this. Your body must be shocked into adaptation. You must experience what you fear. You must face speed before you understand it. Only then will your instincts awaken. Another student, a woman in her late 20s, raised her hand. So, how do we train that? If we can't see it, how do we practice? Bruce smiled faintly. It was a good question. You train by being the target first. You stand there. You let someone move at you at real speed, not to hurt you, but to shock your system. You feel the panic. You feel the freeze. And then, slowly, your body starts to anticipate. Not with your mind. With your instincts. He gestured to Dan. Dan and I have done this for years. I throw strikes at him. He doesn't block them with technique. He blocks them with awareness. With sensitivity. And over time, his body learns to read the smallest cues. The shift in my weight, the flicker of my eyes, the tension in my shoulder. Dan stepped forward, nodding. It's true, Dan said. At first, I couldn't see anything. Bruce would move, and I'd just be standing there like a fool. But after hundreds of representatives, my body started to feel it before I saw it. Bruce pointed at Dan. That's the lesson. Your mind is too slow. But your body, your nervous system, is incredibly fast. Faster than thought. You just have to train it correctly. The students were beginning to understand. This wasn't about memorizing a move. It was about conditioning a response. It was about training the body to operate in the realm of reflex, where thinking was a liability. Bruce walked slowly along the line of students, his voice calm but penetrating. Most people train to look good. They train to impress. They want smooth forms, perfect technique, controlled power. And that's fine. But it's not real. Reality is messy. Reality is fast. Reality doesn't wait for you to get into the perfect stance. He stopped in front of a younger student, barely 20. When someone attacks you, they won't announce it. They won't bow. They won't give you time to breathe. They will explode into your space, and you will have less than a second to respond. If you've only trained slow, you will fail. If you've only trained pretty techniques, you will freeze. The young student swallowed hard, nodding. Bruce's expression softened slightly. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. There's a difference. He turned back to the group. Speed is not aggression. It's efficiency. It's economy. It's the ability to act without hesitation. And you can't learn that from a textbook. You can't learn it from watching videos in slow motion. You have to experience it. If you're feeling this, let it land. Don't just scroll past. Bruce stepped back to the center of the room, his hands resting loosely at his sides. So no, he said quietly. I won't show you slowly. Because that's not the lesson. The room was silent. Every student stood a little straighter. The confusion was gone. In its place was something else. Respect. Understanding. A quiet determination. Bruce let the silence hold for a moment longer. Then he spoke again, his tone quieter now, almost reflective. There's something else I want you to understand. The students leaned in, listening. Most people spend their lives avoiding discomfort. They want everything explained. They want clarity. They want to feel safe before they take a risk. And I understand that. It's human nature. He paused, his gaze distant for a moment, as if speaking to himself as much as to them. But mastery doesn't come from comfort. It comes from confusion. From frustration. From the moments when you don't understand, when you fail, when you feel completely lost, and you keep going anyway. One student nodded slowly. Others stood still, absorbing the weight of his words. When I show you this technique at full speed, I'm not trying to show off. I'm not trying to make you feel small. I'm giving you a gift. The gift of uncertainty. Because it's in that uncertainty that you grow. He began to pace again, his movements deliberate. If I slow it down, you'll feel comfortable. You'll think you understand. And you'll stop trying. But if I keep it fast, keep it real, you'll stay hungry. You'll stay sharp. You'll keep asking questions. You'll keep pushing. Dan Inosanto stepped forward slightly, adding his voice. Bruce once told me, Dan said, that the biggest danger in martial arts is false confidence. When you think you know something, you stop learning. But when you realize how much you don't know, that's when real growth begins. Bruce nodded in agreement. Exactly. I'd rather you leave here confused and curious than confident and stagnant. He stopped pacing and looked directly at the group. So yes, I could show you the technique slowly. I could break it down into 10 steps. I could make it easy to memorize. But then what? You'd memorize a dead technique. A technique without life, without timing, without soul. His voice grew quieter, but more intense. I want you to learn the living technique. The one that adapts. The one that responds. The one that exists in the space between thought and action. And the only way to learn that is to face it at full speed. One of the students, emboldened by the atmosphere, spoke up. So, what should we do now? Bruce smiled faintly. You keep training. You keep exposing yourself to speed. You partner up. You take turns being the aggressor and the target. And you do it again and again until your body stops thinking and starts responding. He gestured to the open floor. Pair up. I want you to practice straight punches, at each other. Not slow. Not full power. But real speed. Real intention. And I want you to see what happens. I want you to feel the gap between what you think you can do and what your body actually does. The students hesitated for a moment, then began to pair off. The room filled with quiet shuffling, nervous energy, anticipation. Bruce walked among them, observing, correcting posture, adjusting distance. Don't telegraph, he said to one pair. Don't pull back before you punch. Just go. Keep your eyes open, he told another. If you blink, you've already lost. Relax, he said to a tense student. Speed comes from relaxation, not tension. Slowly, the students began to move. Tentative at first. Then faster still. And just as Bruce predicted, they struggled. Some flinched before the punch even came. Others froze completely. A few tried to block but were far too late. One student actually laughed nervously after getting tagged lightly on the shoulder. But no one quit. Bruce watched with quiet satisfaction. This was the lesson. Not the technique. The lesson was the struggle. The lesson was the realization that they weren't as ready as they thought. And that realization would fuel their growth. After several minutes, Bruce called them back to the center. How did it feel? He asked. A young woman spoke first. Terrifying. I couldn't react fast enough. Good, Bruce said. Now you know. An older man added, I thought I was ready, but my body didn't listen. Bruce nodded. That's the gap I'm talking about. Your mind thinks you're ready. Your body knows you're not. And the only way to close that gap is through repetition. Real repetition. At real speed. He let them catch their breath, then continued. This is how you train for reality. Not by pretending. Not by going slow until it feels safe. But by embracing the chaos. By letting yourself be uncomfortable. By training your nervous system to respond under pressure. Dan Inosanto stood beside Bruce, arms crossed, nodding in agreement. People ask me all the time, Dan said, why Bruce's students are different. Why they move differently. Why they react faster. This is why. Because Bruce doesn't teach comfort. He teaches adaptation. Bruce smiled slightly at that. I teach you to be water. And water doesn't move slowly unless it has to. Water responds to the shape of its container. It adapts instantly. That's what I want from you. The students stood quietly, visibly changed by the session. They had come in expecting to learn a technique. Instead, they learned a philosophy. Bruce stepped back, his voice calm and final. Remember this. Speed is not just physical. It's mental. It's emotional. It's the ability to act without hesitation, without fear, without doubt. And you only develop that by facing what scares you. He looked at each of them one last time. So next time you train, don't ask me to slow down. Ask yourself to speed up. If this hit you, don't just watch. Become it. Subscribe if you're ready to train your mind the way Bruce trained his body.